Have you ever felt like you're caught in a tug-of-war between your faith and your reason? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating framework that says, hey, you don't have to choose. It's a bold idea, really, trying to build a solid bridge between the spiritual and the scientific, and honestly, it might just change how you look at everything.
And that brings us to the big question, right? Is this conflict just inevitable? The work we're looking at, J.R. Ahmed's The Creator and Mankind, tackles this problem head-on. It doesn't just ask us to rethink the conflict, it suggests the entire conflict is based on a huge misunderstanding. It basically asks, what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if there's a completely different way?
So here's the tension, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got what this framework calls mystical obscurity, just following tradition without asking any questions. And on the other side, you have rigorous, disciplined, analytical thought. The argument here is that true faith isn't about picking a side. It's about moving from that blind adherence toward rigorous inquiry.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? How do we actually bridge that gap? Well, the core idea is that the Quran presents a complete, logical, and totally self-sufficient divine system. Now, I know that's a huge claim, so let's break down what that really means.
It all starts with this concept called deen. Now, this isn't just another word for religion as we usually think of it, something private you do on the weekends. No, deen is defined as an entire system for life, the whole shebang. But the most radical parts? It requires no intermediaries. That's a huge deal. It's arguing for a direct line between you and the Creator. No priests, no institutions, no middleman required.
So in this system, the universe isn't some chaotic, random place. It's described as a perfectly orderly laboratory of deeds. Everything, from the laws of physics to the principles of ethics, operates on these fixed, unchanging laws. They're called Sunnat Allah, the laws of God. And the key takeaway is that these laws aren't secret. They're discoverable through our own intellect.
So how can you tell if a text is really from a divine source? Well, the framework doesn't ask you to just take a leap of faith. It actually proposes a four-part rational test. First, the text has to make sense on its own. It needs to be coherent and logical. Second, you have to be able to verify that it hasn't been corrupted over time. Third, its message has to apply to everyone, everywhere. And finally, and this is so important, it has to challenge you intellectually. It should invite questions, not demand blind obedience.
All right, so now that we have a way to test for authenticity, let's get into the pillars of the system itself. And the first one is a really profound shift in how we think about God. It's all about moving away from the idea of a human-like figure in the sky.
Instead of that, God is presented as the ultimate rational principle, the uncaused cause. Think of it less like a being who has good days and bad days, and more like the fundamental logic behind the entire universe. The source code, if you will, for both physics and morality. So in this view, God isn't just rational, God is rationality itself.
Okay, so if God is the ultimate source of reason, then what about us? Where do we fit in? This second pillar is all about humanity's role and our purpose in this grand logical cosmos. And it all begins with a clean slate.
Now, this is a major departure from a lot of traditional ideas. Concepts like original sin. This idea that we're all born with some kind of spiritual debt we have to pay off. This framework throws that out. It proposes a clean slate. It argues that every single person is born with total moral freedom and the full capacity for reason. Nobody starts the game with a penalty.
So if we all start with a clean slate, what's our job? What are we supposed to do? Our role is described as Khalifah, which basically means a rational trustee. And what's our main tool for the job? It's our intellect, our reason. In Arabic, our aql. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to use our God-given intellect to understand the universe and then actively work to build a just world.
Now, you might be thinking all this talk of logic, reason, and systems sounds a little cold and robotic, but the framework is quick to point out that's not the case at all. As this quote says, all the rational arguments are balanced with vivid, poetic reflections. The idea is to engage your spiritual imagination too. It's a system that's meant for your whole being, both your mind and your heart.
And that brings us to the final pillar. And this is where everything really clicks into place. This is where science and spirituality stop being two separate things and actually merge into one. The framework does this by demythologizing the universe and reframing the search for knowledge as a powerful act of worship. So what does demythologizing actually look like? Well, take the concept of angels.
Instead of beings with wings, they're reinterpreted as the programmed forces of nature, things like gravity, electromagnetism, the laws of physics, or the divine throne. It's not a literal chair somewhere in space, it's a metaphor for God's ultimate authority. The goal here is to get past literal interpretations that don't jive with reason and find the functional meaning behind the symbol.
In this worldview, doing science, figuring things out, is a fundamental spiritual duty. As you can see here, it's broken down into two main fields. There's afak, which is studying the external world, the cosmos and its laws. And there's enfius, studying our internal world, our own minds and consciousness. To be a good trustee, a good Khalifah, you have to study both the universe out there and the universe in here. And this, really, is the ultimate point of it all. To completely dissolve that artificial wall we've built between religious life and secular life. By making scientific discovery a spiritual act, this framework argues for one single, integrated reality. There's no sacred world over here and a profane world over there. There's just one world, and our job is to understand it and make it better. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What would actually change for you, in your life, if you saw the universe not as some scary mystery, but as a laboratory of deeds that's just waiting to be understood? What if your purpose wasn't just to believe, but to discover, to reason, and to build a better, more just world based on that understanding? That's the challenge that this whole framework leaves us with.